Mr. John Davis. Come on, y'all make some noise for John Davis coming here to finish it off on Faith is Our Foundation.
Thank you. I'm John Davis. How many of you have played a video game? You know, I imagine everybody, right? And maybe in that game you drove a car. But that's different from really driving a car. Maybe you shot a gun. But that's different from really shooting a gun. Okay. Maybe you rode a skateboard. But that's different from really riding a skateboard. Okay. Well, we can read our Bible and we can read about God. We can listen to Eli and Sheridan tell us about God. But that's a little different from experiencing God. God's working around you all the time. The world doesn't want you to see. The world doesn't want you to hear. The world doesn't want you to think. Now, each of you has all the tools you need to find God. You've got that divine spark, okay? And God wants us to look for Him. He wants us to seek Him, okay? But when you do find Him, give Him a fair shot. Don't call it something else. Don't be blind to what's happening in front of you, okay? The Bible supports this. Can we look at Matthew? There we go. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open for you. Okay? And there's lots of scriptures that support seeking God. So how are we going to do that? Okay. Well, today we're going to go hunting for God. Okay. But first, we need to acquire some hunting skills. So we're going to learn about hunting for squirrels. Okay. There we go. There's one of those little critters. About 40 years ago, I decided to start squirrel hunting. So I read a little bit about them, looked at the regulations, and went out into the woods in the darkness. Now, do I stand there and say, squirrels, present yourselves? No. No, I went out, 5 a.m., sat under a tree. Now, the world of the woods is different than the world of the city. Okay? And when you sit there, you hear the night birds. Do you know they're night birds? They're calling all night long. Okay? And then you get first light. But turns out the squirrels like to sleep in. They actually come out pretty close to true dawn about 30 minutes after first light. Okay? And quickly, as you're kind of sitting there, studying everything, remember we're thinking, okay? We're watching, we're listening. You learn that the most important thing is to be still and quiet. If you can be still and quiet, deer will walk so close you can reach out and touch them. Bobcats will walk silently in front of you. Okay? And as you're watching those squirrels, you learn things like you have to think. You hear a sound and you learn, oh, that's the sound of their claws on the tree. Okay? If they spot you, they have a little warning. They have this little warning bark. Okay? And you don't quite know where it's coming from. But you'll figure out that when they bark, their little tail jumps. Okay? And you can look for that little jumping tail. And that helps you spot them. Okay? You learn that when they're eating a nut, it sounds like rubbing two pennies together. Okay? So what are our hunting skills? Well, we want to think. We want to listen. We want to be still. We want to be quiet. Okay? We want to watch. Okay? Now, before I leave squirrel hunting, I have to get a little sidetracked. Okay? In my 20-something mind, I had the notion that single young ladies would look forward to a squirrel dinner. That didn't work out so well. Okay. Some of the young ladies might have even used terms like tree rats. Okay. I know, it hurt my feelings. Okay. But there was one young lady that looked forward to a squirrel dinner. Okay. So I married her, had to. Okay. And she is still eating field to table today, only now it's venison. Okay, so now we have our skills. We have our hunting skills, but what are we going to go hunting for? Am I going to go hunting for a burning bush, a sea that is parted, water to wine? Oh, I don't know. We need to narrow it down a little bit. And plus, a lot of those things, parting seas, don't seem to happen that often. I think if we look, we can find God pretty close to our daily lives. Okay? So let's dust off the Bible, and we are going to go back. We are going to go all the way back to Elijah. Okay? Elijah, often considered one of the greatest prophets of the Old Testament, lived 900 years before Christ, 2,900 years ago. Okay? And he's famous for a few things. By the way, the prophets basically received a message from God, and they told it to the leaders and told it to the people. And each of the prophets kind of has their own story, but they kind of have a common message. And that message is, you've turned your back on God, and you're worshiping false idols and false gods. Yeah. Now, if we brought Elijah forward to today, would he have to change his message? I don't think so. That Bible is more alive than you realize. It is alive today. Okay. Also, Elijah later comes back in the New Testament and goes camping with Jesus, along with Moses on the Mount of Transfiguration. Okay. But that is another story for another time. We're going to pick up Elijah today. He is having a bad day. Queen Jezebel has vowed to kill him. And she's already killed all of his prophet friends. Okay? And so he is on the run, running just as fast as he can. He is, basically, if he were here, he would have headed off into the Wichita Mountains in his little sandals and his robe. And he is probably on the other side of a mountain, and he is wore out. Can we go to our Kings? There we go. He arose and ran for his life and went to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and sat down under a broom tree and prayed that he might die, and said, "It's enough now, Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers." As he lay there and slept under a broom tree, suddenly an angel touched him and said to him, "Arise and eat." Then he looked, and there by his head was a bread baked on coals and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. Okay. Brothers and sisters, when I read this passage, I had to stop because I experienced a moment of biblical clarity. I did not need a Greek dictionary. I did not need a book of Jewish customs. Okay. I knew what that was talking about. God made biscuits. Okay. Think cowboy camp, right? Cast iron skillet, wood fire, covered, biscuits inside. And then I had a moment of inspiration. Now, it may not have been divine inspiration, but remember in January when we had all that fasting going on in the church? And then you remember Lent when you have to give things up? Okay. Maybe that needs to be just flipped around. Hot Biscuit Sunday. Okay. Now, I keep hearing that Andre is like a super chef. Maybe he could help. In fact, we could have biscuit communion. Yeah. Okay. Now, that's the type of thinking that gets me in lots and lots of trouble. So we need to get back to Elijah. Let's see what Elijah's going to do now. Oh, here we go. And the angel of the Lord came back again and touched him and said, arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you. So he had a double helping, okay? So he arose and he ate and he drank and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights as far as Horeb, okay? Now let's think about that. On his own power, he lasted a day. With God's help, he's hiking for 40 days. If he were in a straight line, he'd be up into the panhandle by now. Okay, so what's he going to do at Horeb? Oh, it's the mountain of God. And there he went into a cave and spent the night in that place. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him and said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? So he said, I've been very zealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I am left, and they seek to take my life. Let's go to the next page. Then he said, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, and behold, the Lord is passing by. And a great and strong wind tore into the mountains and broke the rocks into pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. A whisper. I like to think of it as a whisper, a soft touch, a gentle nudge. Okay? So we don't have to go hunting for seas parting. We can kind of look for whispers, soft touches, gentle nudges. I like to think that if God is working, probably unusual things might be happening, unexpected things. So, for instance, if you start flipping quarters and you hit 5 heads in a row, that's unusual. So that's the sort of thing we're going to hunt for. We're going to go out and hunt and see what we can find. And when we find God in action, okay, you'll find that just like hunting, you're going to get better at it. And you're going to be able to find it more easily. You're going to be able to find more subtle things. And as you experience that, your faith will increase and grow. Okay? So I'm sure you probably want an example. We want an example. You can say it. Okay. All right. Last October, I got tangled up with a strip center in Arkadelphia, Arkansas. Strip center is just a building with a bunch of stores in it, kind of like that. And usually they're next to a Lowe's or something like that. This one, I never knew a strip center was so funny. Is it the word strip that gets you going? Okay. So there's nothing like eyes on. So I got in my little car and drove to Arkadelphia. Okay. And it is on the other side of Paris, Texas. It's about 6 or 7 hours away. And as I'm getting ready to go out there, there's a company that's supposed to be, mowing the grass and keeping it cleaned up. So I call them up and ask them to meet me there. And they say, no. That's what I thought. I thought, well, you're getting a check every month and you're not going to meet me there? Okay. So that's coin flip number 1. Okay. So I get to Arkadelphia, get up the next morning, go out to the strip center, and it turns out that the hardest work this outfit's been doing is cashing the check. No, that's what I thought. And you can't rent a place, if it's all not pretty. Okay, so I start working the phone, and I call 3 landscaping companies. One of them's doing the credit union that's next door. Okay, now for a landscaping company, a corporate contract is gold. Okay, because you get paid every month. You get paid 12 months a year. You don't worry about the check bouncing. You are a happy camper. Okay, by the end of the day, and I've been talking to tenants and running around doing things, no one has called me back. That's coin flips 2, 3, and 4. Okay? And so I wound up back at the strip center, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's getting dark. I'm leaving the next morning, and I have nothing. So I'm having my little, not really a pity party. I was just kind of agitated, okay? And I know something's up. I'm like, this is really odd, but I don't know what to do about it, okay? So as I'm sitting there, I see that there's a truck in the parking lot. And it's a working man's truck. By that I mean it's not a $70,000 truck, it's a $1,700 truck. And it has a little trailer attached to it. And in the trailer, there's things like an air compressor and a ladder and paint cans. Okay? And this guy's sitting in it. Then comes the whisper. What about this guy? Okay? So I walk over to him and start talking. It turns out his name is Brad. He works at the lumber mill that's there. He does some shift work. Okay? And his wife is over at the Walmart shopping. She'll be along in a little bit. And so I asked him if he'd be interested in working on this place. Okay. And he gives the right answer. Now, guys, listen. Okay. I have to talk to my wife. Okay. So, turns out, by the way, they're Pentecostal. And Eli's told us about Pentecostals before. They're enthusiastic. Okay. And his wife comes over. And when you see the two of them, you can kind of tell that each has maybe some challenges, but together they're sort of complete. He's probably better at swinging trimmers and blowers, and she's better at paperwork and numbers. And together they're quite the team. Okay. So we say, okay. They say they'll do it. They'll work for us. Okay. Now, I've never hired a person in the parking lot before. And then comes the test. Gee, I need some money for supplies. Oh, man, my little spidey senses are going off. John. But then I'm thinking about it. You know, all he knows about me is I'm in a little car with Oklahoma plates. Okay? So we need to step out on faith. So I hand him $100, and I come back the next morning on my way out of town. He's there. Okay? He's working away. 9 months later, he is still working for us. He has the keys to the place. He shows it to tenants. He brings in the contractors. And when you think about it, we've kind of been a blessing to him, and he's been a blessing to us. And think how unlikely all those events are. If he had parked on the other side of the wall, next to the Walmart, never would have seen him. If he'd been 15 minutes earlier, 15 minutes later, never would have seen him. If the 3 contractors hadn't failed to use the phone, never would have seen him. Okay? God agitated me, okay, so something could get done. Okay? Now, I know how a lot of you are. And, well, wait just a second here. I know how some others of you are, okay? And some of you are going to poo-poo that. You're going to say, John, that happens all the time. Go ahead and say that. That's the point, okay? It happens all the time. And what do we say? Do we give God credit for it? Do we even recognize that he's working? No. Oh, that's lucky. Well, wasn't he lucky that day? That was serendipity, karma. Anything except God. That is the world working on you, blinding you to what's going on around you. Okay? But I know I've got hard cases out here, and those hard cases are going to say something like, John, we want an extreme example. Go ahead, you can say it. Okay. Now, for that, I have to go back a little bit, okay? Because extreme examples don't happen as often. We're going to go back 20 years ago, okay? And it happened in a simple sort of way, like these things do. We were having it was about May or so, we were having a children's party at Lake Latonka. We were up in the public use area in the north part of the lake. You can just drive up, picnic tables, that sort of thing, okay? And we had a bunch of 10, 11, and 12-year-olds running around. And I had a little John boat at the time, which I brought out to the lake. Oh, there's one. Looked a lot like that. Had 9.9 horsepower Evinrude motor. And I was taking the children on little rides in the lake. And it doesn't go fast, but it's low to the water. It seems a lot faster than it is. So I'd been out several times. And I was just getting ready to go out again. And I loaded this young girl, had her life jacket on in the front. Okay. Went to start the engine. Pulled that cord. Nothing. Pulled that cord again. Nothing. Pulled that cord again. Nothing. And I stopped. This isn't right. It's warmed up. It's got gas. It's been running all morning. It should have started right up. And then as I was thinking about that, I heard this commotion going on down the shore. And I looked down the shore, and there were 15 or 20 people that were just hollering and yelling and waving their arms. And I thought, what are they carrying on about? And then I kind of looked where they were pointing. They were walking out in the water with like these water noodle things, you know, that you swim with. And there was a man drowning in the lake. He was like, 100, 150 yards out there. And I don't mean he was just a flopping around. He was near the end. He would go completely down. And then he would manage to get himself up for just a second to catch a breath, and he would go completely down again. And I thought, oh my. And as soon as I saw him, I looked back to the motor. And I saw that the safety strap had jumped off the motor and was down on the floor of the boat, 2 feet away from my elbow. You know, the Bible talks about people being blind and cannot see, right? And then their eyes are opened. How can you miss an orange safety strap that's 2 feet away from you? But there it was. So I grabbed it and attached it to the motor. And guess what? The motor started right up like it was supposed to. Okay. And so we headed out for him. Little girl's still in the front. And we get close to where I think he is, except he's gone under again. And so I cut power and coast in because I don't want the prop to cut him. Okay. And there is nothing. It is flat water. And I think to myself, I guess we're too late. And I'm looking. There's nothing there. Then this hand comes out of the water and grabs the side of the boat. Okay. That hand is followed by a head. And his eyes, if you've ever seen animals or people in a panic, his eyes are rolling. I mean, he's wound up. Okay. And he pulls himself into the boat. He's a fit guy, probably in his 30s. He's wearing jeans and a shirt. And I'm thinking, that's part of the problem. Okay. So he gets in the boat, and I run him back to his people. They are very, very happy to see him, but they don't speak a word of English. So I never get the backstory on how he happened to be drowning in the middle of the lake. Okay. Now, was he lucky? If he was relying on John luck, I would have been watching Lake Patrol fish him out after I got finished running around the lake. He was lucky that he had 20 friends and family praying to God and begging for his life. He was lucky that the safety strap jumped off the motor. He's lucky that the slow-witted boat operator was blinded to the strap being there. He was lucky that God lifted him out of the water one more time. He was lucky that God wanted him to live one more day. So, brothers and sisters, when God is working in front of you, it's not karma, serendipity, good fortune. Okay? Call it out and praise God and thank Him for letting you see a little tiny bit of His work.